Learning all of the major 2-5-1s off by heart is a massive game changer when it comes to understanding chord movements in jazz standards. Not knowing all of your 2-5-1s in every key is going to be a massive blind spot, which is going to really hamper your jazz guitar progress. But where do you start in what might seem like a sea of chords to try and memorize? When you're practicing, you want to be making as much music as possible, but you will never escape some things that simply just have to be known in order to become a proficient jazz guitarist. Now, stay tuned for my 5 tips on how to learn and memorize this really important chord progression in all keys. Tip 1 is to ensure you understand the harmonization of the major scale and where the 2-5-1 comes from so that you can work it out in other keys. If you take a C major scale, the second note is D, the fifth note is G, and the first note is C, and that's where the 2-5-1 element comes from. We harmonize, we build chords off the 2, the 5 and the 1, and if you build chords off all of the 7 notes of the C major scale, it yields the following chords: C major 7, D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7, G 7, A minor 7, B minor 7 flat 5 back to C major 7. Now we assign Roman numerals to all of those chords, and if we pick out the second chord, the fifth chord and the first chord, the 2-5-1 becomes D minor 7, G 7, C major 7. Now if we go through all keys, the 2 chord will always be a minor 7, the 5 chord will always be a dominant 7th, and the 1 chord will always be a major 7. Now you can download a free PDF from my website with this on, with all the keys, and you can spot all the 2-5-1s in there to help you learn this. So what we just did for C, we can do with every major scale. Take an F major scale, so F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, F. The second note is G, the fifth note is C, and the first note is F. So if we build minor 7, dominant, major 7 off of those notes, we have, let's do it down here, G minor 7, C 7, F major 7. Want to work out what the 2-5-1 in the key of D is? Well, D major scale is, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. So the second note was E, so it's going to be a minor 7 chord off that one. The fifth note was A, so that's going to be our dominant chord. The first note was D, so it's going to be our D major 7. And now that you know how the 2-5-1 relates to the major scale and how chords are formed, you should be able to work out the 2-5-1 for any key, provided you know your major scales. And another way you can work it out just with sort of fretboard intervals, if you like, taking this as we did just down here. If 1 is there, like F, the 2 is a tone above it, and then the 5th is going to be adjacent on the same fret. This is the root of the 5th, that is, on the next strings down. So that can help you work out the 2-5-1. So if I went, plonk myself on a D up here, at fret 10, I know the 2's a tone above, so the 2's going to be based off an E, so an E minor 7, and then the 5th sits just beneath the 2 on the A string, same fret. So that's fret 12, which is an A obviously, so it's going to be E, A, D, E minor 7, A 7, D. So that's one way you can work it out with this shape, which would be the same on those strings up and down the neck. Tip number 2 is to use the circle of fifths to help you learn this information. It is an absolute gift when it comes to learning things like this because all the information is clearly set out on there. If I put it on the screen, you'll see why. So our 2-5-1 in C was D minor 7, G 7, C major 7. Now if you look on that outer circle, which is the major keys, you'll see D, G and C are right next to each other there at the top. And if we go back to, the 2-5-1 in F was G minor 7, C 7, F. If we move 1 in, there it is again. So if you go counterclockwise on the circle of fourths, if you start from somewhere, that's your 2, the one above it will be the 5th, and the one above that will be the 1st. So there's your 2-5-1, and you can easily use the circle of fifths to do that. Here's something I would suggest you do. Print a copy of the circle of fifths. Have it up where you practice so you can refer to it and get used to practicing with it. I hear you can even get a circle of fifths clock if you want to take it any further. Tip 3 is play it. Get used to playing it a lot in different keys. I've created a PDF with the 2-5-1 in all keys, which you can follow along if you like. It moves in fourths, just because that's the way they're often used in songs. So it would go D minor 7, G 7, C major 7, then G minor 7, C 7, F major 7. And then our next key is B flat. Okay, so B flat major, then we go C minor 7, F 7, B flat major. So you can follow it all the way round on there. You'll follow it all the way through, and you'll keep going until you reach back to C. So you go around the circle counterclockwise all the way around. Here's some practice suggestions with that. First off, play it in free time. So don't worry about playing it in time to start with. Just, you know, maybe print it out or look at it on the computer and just follow it through. You might have to think about where some of those chords are. Just follow it through in free time, not worrying about the speed at which you get into the chords, more thinking about what you're playing, you know. So D minor 7, G7 is the 2-5 in C, but G minor 7, C7, F major 7 is in F. Notice again it's the same sound quality because it's the same movement. Next thing you could do with that could be, well, if you find yourself playing it in the same way, as in you start there with the minor 7 always on the A string, then start on the E string with it. And you could use root E, A, or even D for this. So if I did it, D minor 7 root E will be here. Here on the A string. And here on the D string. And that's just playing it in root position. G7 I could go on E string, A string, D string, C major 7, E string, A string, D string. You could mix and match those, find different ways of playing it. You know, just if you find yourself doing things the same way all the time, then you need to mix it up to get more from it. Now, there's plenty of good backing tracks on YouTube that go through 2-5-1s in all keys, so you can play along with this and go round with them at the same time. You don't have to play constant rhythm, you can just leave a sustained chord per bar. You could have it written out in front of you in terms of where it's moved to begin with, and then work to be able to do it from memory. Some of these, you know, backing tracks also say what it is as it's moving, so that will help you too. Now, being able to play all of that's really important. You want to take it a step further, that'll be even better for your progression. Know the notes of each chord as it moves around. So go like, and you can either play them or you can just maybe say them as you play the chords. So like D minor 7, D, F, A, C, G7, G, B, D, F, C major 7, C, E, G, B. You could go around the full circle trying to do that. That's quite a lot of information to retain. Try and play it as an arpeggio. D minor 7, G7, C major 7, G minor 7, C7, F. Try and work your way around that. That would be quite involved, but good for your knowledge of the chords, what the notes in them, to, you know, take your learning to another step. Not just playing them, but know what notes are within those chords that you're playing. If that's too much, take those backing tracks, you know, that go through all the keys, and maybe just take the roots through it. So go like D, G, C, 2-5-1 in F, G, C, F. Then go to do the same for all of the progressions. You could then take the third, F for the third of D, G for the third of, sorry, B for the third of G, and E for the third of C. So, you know, taking the different intervals through your 2-5-1 could be a nice thing to do. I suggested all those practice methods. They're not all to be done at the same time. It's more of a linear sort of logical progression through those different practice methods. Now, important thing here to think about with practicing any musical instrument and any genre, whether it be jazz or whatever, is the fact that if you obviously do things in the same way, you just get more of the same. So you constantly have to refine and vary how you're practicing things, which will help, you know, ensure your progress doesn't flatline. You know, you obviously, if you practice the same thing, you just get more of the same. So you constantly have to rework how you're doing these things. Tip 4, we don't need this for, don't play it, think about it. Now you're walking the dog, you're trying to get off to sleep, you're stuck in traffic. Perfect times to think about 2-5-1s, right? Well, I use times like this to try and work on my memory of scales or chord patterns, or to see if I could, you know, mentally go through a chord progression in my head to check whether I've memorized it. And you could do this with 2-5-1s. So things you could do, you could try and work your way completely around the circle. So, you know, you start at C, right, what's the 2-5-1? It's D minor, G7, C major 7. Move to the key of F, go in a fourth. 2-5-1 is G minor 7, C7, F major 7. See if you can get all the way back to C. Another thing you could do is pick a random key and try and see how quickly you can think about the 2-5-1. So let's go A flat major. So hopefully your response will be pretty quick and you think, okay, what's so A flat? You could think of the major scale if you need to help you work it out, or hopefully you've got that knowledge of the harmonized scale and you can go, right, it's 2 is B flat minor, 7, 5 is E flat 7, and the 1 is obviously A flat major 7. Play games like if D flat 7 is the 5 chord, what's the 2 and the 1? Okay, so if it's the 5, it's the 5 of G flat. So the 2-5-1 would be A flat minor 7, D flat 7, G flat major 7. You could obviously get someone to test you at random. That's another thing you could do. You could use my chart with all of the 2-5-1s on and get someone to test you. I think the point to make here is you don't need a guitar to practice. It doesn't all come down to time playing these things on the guitar. There may be days where life just gets in the way and you don't have time to necessarily get on your instrument and hands on and play. But you might have times like I said, stuck in traffic or waiting for something where, waiting for an appointment or something where you just sat there and there's not a lot to do. You could check your phone and look at, social media or whatever, or you could, try and chip away at something like learning all your 2-5-1s. Tip number 5 is to open the real book or your chord book, whatever, and try and spot 2-5-1s and try and work out what key those 2-5-1s are in. We've taken different steps to get this far, but this is the real application stage where stuff really starts to click into place. And you want to get to this point where you look at a chart for the first time, a new song in the real book or a chart from somewhere, and the 2-5-1s just flash out at you straight away, and they help you see where things are moving. And that's the overall aim of this all. It's not just to memorize the 2-5-1s, it's to ensure that you know what keys those 2-5-1s are in so you can interpret standards more deeply. If you follow those previous tips, then you should have no trouble getting to this stage, the application stage where things really pay off, and all that hard work of committing the 2-5-1s and all keys to memory really does help you when you're practicing and when you're playing and improvising. And you'll know you've got to this stage when you open up the real book or whatever chart you're looking at and the 2-5-1s just flash out at you. And straight away, you see B flat minor 7, E flat 7, A flat major 7. You know that that's a 2-5-1 in A flat major. Or if you just saw, I don't know, D minor 7, G7 and it doesn't go to C, you know it's a 2-5. That maybe doesn't resolve to the C, but it helps you understand why it's there. What it will really help you do is help you see where the songs might be going next, what key center you're in at that particular moment in the song, which will help you know what scales or arpeggios to go for. Let's look at an example. Look at Misty, just the first line. And you got major 7, then you see, oh, it goes minor 7, dominant 7th, major 7. Now, that isn't always a 2-5-1. Because if, a 2-5-1 in the key of A flat major is that B flat minor 7, E flat 7, A flat major 7. But had there been a different major 7 chord after, like D flat major 7 or something, then that's obviously not 2-5-1 because it's not going to A flat. But even still, most of the time it will. So there you go, there's an example. So then you can interpret that. Okay, so we're in the key of E flat, 3 flats. So that's chord 1. And then it goes this 2-5-1, so sort of moving to A flat major, the 4 chord in that key. So that instantly helps you understand that movement because that's quite a nice jazzy movement there at the start that kind of takes you away from E flat briefly. A word of warning with this when you're looking at the real book or jazz standards is that sometimes you won't get the 1, you just get 2-5. Take the opening to Satin Doll, which goes. So it's going D minor 7, G7 twice, moves up a tone, E minor 7, A7. So what's that? It is a minor 7 to a dominant, moving by a 4th in both instances. So it is a 2-5, but there's no 1. So really what this is, it's a 2-5 which isn't resolved. So it's a 2-5 in C, then it moves up a tone and it's a 2-5 in the key of D. So what happens there is, first 2 bars in the key of C, then it moves to the key of D. So when it doesn't go to the 1, it doesn't mean you still can't interpret how the harmony's working there, but just be aware it doesn't always go to 1. And you'll notice, like if you compare different chord charts from different publishers, that sometimes you'll see something like there'll be a dominant 7th and it will just be a 5 chord for a whole bar, whereas someone else's version it will have the 2 and the 5. Say Honeysuckle Rose, the first section, you'll get some people that play it like G minor 7, C7 to an F, whereas some people will just play that as a C, going to an F there. So, sometimes people ditch the 2 because it's not as important as the 5 in practice. So don't be put off by times where either you don't see the 1 or sometimes there's just a 5. And those chords are so linked, they're so common. You'll notice this stuff more and more once you're aware of all the 2-5-1s in every key. So in the long term, you commit this information to memory, you'll really thank yourself for having done it. You will interpret standards so much more clearly and you'll be able to predict where songs are going to go. And this is how you'll see people get up and play with someone for the first time. They're called a tune. They might not be familiar with it, but because they have this understanding and knowledge of harmony here, and the way that songs typically move, and the way that 2/5s do it, then they'll be able to predict where it will go, providing it's not too crazy on the jazz scale. Master this information for major 2/5-1s, and doing the same for minor 2/5-1s will be nowhere near as difficult. Now this type of study, it might throw up some other areas of theory that you feel like, oh, I really don't know this stuff, or there might be things you think I need to learn that. Well, what I would say, rather than sort of stressing out about it or getting overwhelmed with what you don't know, just focus on this one thing, the major 2/5-1 in all keys, and don't stop pursuing it until you've got it 100%. By focusing on one thing, you'll be taking a massive step forward in your jazz knowledge, and you'll be really secure in that one thing, which will really help your progress, rather than bits of theory here or there that, you know, don't kind of all fall together as one as they should. Now, some musicians only know the 2/5-1 in a couple of keys, and for me it's a massive blind spot, and focusing on this one area will really transform your understanding of the music you're trying to play. If you haven't got your full fix of 2/5-1s for today, then I've made 2 other videos on the 2/5-1 in terms of how to play over it and what sort of arpeggio and scale choices you can go for. So if you'd like those, I'll put those on the screen for you to check out. If you're new here for the first time, then thank you for checking out my video. My name's Andy, and I do jazz guitar lessons every Wednesday and Saturday, so be sure to hit that subscribe button and join me every Wednesday and Saturday. Hit that notification bell to be informed of my next video. Until next time, see you soon.